Sydney Ryker. Welcome to the Fieldswell Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that we're getting to chat again. So
Me
awesome.
too. For our listeners, Sydney and I originally met at Risk on 360 in Las Vegas. I was immediately drawn to Sydney. She was this beautiful, badass woman in a suit. But beyond that, she was showing up to share her story. And that takes a certain level and certain type of woman who's ready to be vulnerable and open up in the mission and pursuit of helping others. And so I knew I was instantly drawn to you. I was like, I can't wait to have her on the show. And here we are a couple of months later making it happen.
I know. I'm so glad that we could make it happen. It was a great event, and meeting you was definitely a highlight.
So for our listeners, we're going to talk all about Sydney's story and really get into how spirituality meets business. To start, is it correct that you started your pursuit with $50 to your name and a mattress on the floor?
Yes. Yeah. I started in entrepreneurship straight out of college. So, of course, had no money. I was living out in Montana where I was born and raised. And I graduated. I had $50 left in my account after I bought my one-way ticket to San Diego, which we were just talking about. And I called up this girl. I actually shared part of this story on stage. I called this girl that I knew on Instagram. I called her on the Instagram app. I was like, hey, can I grab you lunch or dinner with this $50? 2017 was $50 for dinner.
Yeah.
And we went to dinner, and we befriended each other, and I kind of convinced / enrolled / she invited me to move in with her. And she was, a really successful entrepreneur in the networking space.
Mhm.
And she had some great mentors she introduced me to, and it kind of just spiraled into this perfect storm for me. And, first couple of years I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor, like you said, and it just kind of grew from there, honestly.
Such an incredible story. And for anyone who's listening and they're like, I don't have the savings or I don't have the connections, listen to this story. You really can start with nothing by meeting someone tomorrow who can completely change your life.
Totally. It's, that old adage, one call can change it all. And I've always really, it's sometimes difficult to live by that, but I've learned time and time again, it's so true. One conversation, one meeting somebody at an event, it can really change everything for you if you are open to possibilities.
Yeah. So what originally drove your entrepreneurial quest and mindset at that point in time? Did you have a clear vision for what you wanted to create for yourself?
No, I was running away from pain. I think a lot of people, they're so much more willing to run away from pain than to run towards pleasure. And that was me, because I was born and raised in Montana, not like California like you. What a blessing. Entrepreneurship wasn't like a course you could take in college. And so I went to school to be a teacher. Okay. But all I knew was that I was not the type of person that could be employed by somebody else. And so while I went to school to be a teacher, to make my parents happy, to, live up to societal expectations, I knew that it wasn't going to be what I was going to do. And so I had no idea what it was going to be. I loved fitness. I found my way to fitness products and selling those and building a business in that industry. And it ended up being shockingly educational and lucrative for me. And it taught me a lot. But it was not anything that was planned by any means. It was just like one step in front of the other,
It's like you reach out, you make that connection, and one thing leads to the next. And it's almost like this domino effect. You can't even stop it. And you're like, wow, I blinked and look at all that has happened because I made that one call, email, had that conversation.
And it's one of those things that once you see, it's like the Matrix, right? I've never even seen that, but it's like whatever, blue pill, red pill, one of the pills you take. Once you see things or learn things about entrepreneurship or being self-employed or having freedom in your days to do what you want, the way you want. I could never be employed by someone now. Like there's no way. I've tried a couple times. Doesn't work. But it's when I really feel like a lot of people are starting to wake up to the idea that we can really live our lives by design. And that's, it's so exciting.
It really is to understand that you are the creator of your reality.
Yes. Yeah. But that takes a level of person that's willing to not be a victim. You know, it's like, that's what you have to give up to be able to live a life of freedom, is you being a victim, which is a very sexy thing as well for a lot of people.
The victimhood. Yeah.
Yep.
And I keep touching on wanting to get into like this difference between vulnerability and victimhood. Because I think when you're vulnerable, you're sharing your story to like kind of let others know like what you've been through, but you are moving in the process of moving through it or already have, and you're using it to help others who may be going through something similar. You're not looking to be saved.
Yeah. And a lot of people share, from my experience, they're sharing while they're in it. But I highly recommend you don't do that. You can, but it can come off as, my husband just got mad at, we just got in a fight. I just had some sick thing with my business go on. If you can share from hindsight being 2020, your energy will not be a victimhood. Usually it'll be very much more, how can this story help other people? But I think vulnerability and sharing our story can be hard for people for sure. But once you do it once, you're like, oh, that helped so many people. Why would I not do that more? There's such a positive reinforcing cycle with it.
Yeah. And to your point, sharing it when you're in it, you may not be able to see it clearly because you're so deep in it. And once you get some space from it, you'll start to understand it differently. And it just goes to show how much our memory is just like a story we're telling ourselves about what happened, and that it's actually not 100% what actually happened. I've heard Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I follow, being like, it's 50% accurate. Like,
so
it's
true.
not even actually what happened. And you're so wrapped up in that story, and you're like addicted to the drama, the trauma, the suffering. And like, you really need to move beyond that to have like a clear idea of what happened. And what's so important is ensuring the story you're telling yourself about your past is aligned with where you want to go in the future.
So powerful. I did not know he talked about that, but that is one of the biggest things that holds us back, right? It's like telling us this victimhood past story and not moving on to the future. While also, can we balance that with living in the present, not thinking about the past, but also learning from the past?
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot.
It's a lot. My boyfriend, we started a business together a couple years ago, and he tends to remember fights we had. When we have a fight, I move on. I don't ever think about it again. Sometimes that causes me to not learn the lesson fully, right? So it might happen once or twice more, but it's really being able to strike that balance.
Yeah. So let's get into your story a bit more. You, in your 20s, founded multiple successful companies, built health organizations with 7,000 plus customers, and scaled multiple 8-figure global sales organizations. It's a mouthful. You did so much in your younger 20s, and then you hit burnout. Talk us through like what that was like for you, and what was the wake-up call?
Wake-up call was, it was a lot. It was one of the big ones, was having a business with a really great friend of mine, and that because of my choices, that relationship being severed and me losing that friend and that business. And I also think, I'm into astrology. Saturn return was a very real thing for me. I'm coming out of it as we speak. But what I think, a lot of people when they go into their 30s realizes what is not working. And it becomes very clear and it becomes very evident. And that's what I went through. And what that looked like for me was I stepped back from everything. I was like, I need to detox my entire system. I am so burnt out. I'm so unfulfilled. I'm so unhappy. I'm so not on the right track. And I just had so much success. So that means that success and money does not equate to fulfillment and a life that we're proud of, and actual success. Success, peace of mind, peace of spirit. And so what that looked like for me is I quit my businesses. I shut everything down. I took the year off. I stopped dyeing my hair. I stopped wearing makeup. I stopped putting on normal clothes. I went full cave mode and stripped away everything, because a big identity I carried was I had to be beautiful to be successful. I had to be, whatever, which a lot of women carry that. And so that was tied up in my hair. That was tied up in me doing spray tans and, being a certain size and all of these things. And so it was a year of detoxing all of that. And it was painful and it was confronting. And it took time. It took 18 months.
Yeah. And it's almost like we're faced with this question, who am I? Am I this identity that I've constructed of myself, this person I've become? who am I? What am I about? What are my values? Am I true to those? And like, how did you get to the bottom of that? Talk to us about, I love this term, identity deconstruction.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's what I call the whole process I went through, which all of us at some point in our life, if we're on the growth journey, if you're listening to this podcast, you'll probably have that experience of identifying what is the core belief, the core identity that you picked up along the way. Is it being a good mom or a bad mom, right? Did you pick up being the smart kid? Did you pick up being the really lean cheerleader girl in high school? And then you feel like you have to live that out your whole life.
Yeah.
Strong guy, right? Whatever. We all have a core one that we picked up. And for me, again, that was being pretty and using my looks to get success.
Yeah.
And so identity deconstruction is taking away and taking away and taking away and taking away all the lifelines, all the buoys that we throw out, can throw out to ourselves to save ourselves in the water, and facing the emotion over and over and over and over and over again, burning in it, crying, feeling it. That's the only way to move through emotion, to move through limiting beliefs, limiting patterns, is to feel it, to heal it. I call it feel it to heal it. And when we can do that, we can come out eventually on the other side actually healed, right? Not needing to continue to do all this work on ourselves. And then we can shine, then we can pay it forward, then we can shine our light to the world in the way that we're supposed to. But it was a lot of, not therapy, but working with a spiritual teacher of mine, and a lot of crying and a lot of journaling and a lot of, releasing.
Yeah. And it's really what it sounds like is like just developing your confidence and self-worth from everything inside of you, as opposed to these like external picture of what people may see on Instagram. And so many of us grow up, like, I know I was a young girl looking at photos of Angelina Jolie on the internet, like at 6 years old, being like, how do her boobs look like that? How does she look like that? Like, I want to look like that. How is that possible? What we don't understand is like, sure, she is naturally stunning,
gorgeous,
but now we don't even know what work women have had done, how they look like they do. And we're just like grown up around this culture of individuals now like altering their external appearance. And we tie that to success. We tie it to confidence. And it's important to understand it all comes from within. And that's the best, most consistent way to find it, to develop it, to keep it.
It's the only sustainable way. So that was a big one for me, because when I was early 20s, I was seeing these people on stages, and they were the women, they had their boobs done, they had their Botox, they had their hair, whatever, nothing against any of that.
Right.
But for me, I started getting that done very young. I started getting lip filler. I started getting Botox. I started dyeing my hair. And those were the big three. And so when I went into this season, I was like, I'm getting off of social media. I'm deleting it from my phone. I'm not building a business on there. I can afford to do that right now. And I stopped like you can tell, my hair is this is all natural hair. I haven't touched my hair. I haven't done Botox in 5 years now at this point, because I had to get so sure of who I was without any of it. And I knew if I could own that, then if I ever got anything done, I knew I didn't need it to be okay. But before, it was like that lifeline, like I was talking about.
Yeah. And it's really refreshing hearing you open up and talk about like the position you were in and all the things you did to really find your way back to yourself. For our listeners who may be like questioning, like, I don't know who I am. I have been doing like all these alterations to myself and I still have a low self-esteem. What are some daily practices or some rituals your spiritual guide led you through that maybe our listeners could start to tap into?
There's many. And I will actually give you a link for everybody where I have all the practices in one place that he gave me. And I can walk through some of those. But based on your question, I would actually say one that he didn't recommend to me, and he never would because he's not a woman. The only thing that helped me with that specifically, the insecurities that we have despite all of the work we do, is exposure therapy to the one thing that you want to avoid. And so for me, that started with my hair, and it was, my roots were here. And I was like, how can I just go a month? How can I go a month and look at myself in the mirror every day and say, I love you. You're beautiful. You're so amazing despite your hair. And how can I just keep doing that until I don't even think about it? And now I look in the mirror, I'm like, I love my hair. I love the color of my hair. But it was painful. And so then it was Botox. How can I look in the mirror and go like this and not feel like this is bad.
Yeah.
And it's exposure therapy every single day. It is not fun. That is the whole point. Most people will never do this work because it is not fun, but it is the most liberating work and the work that we all should be doing as women right now, especially. So that would be the one that I would recommend. Is what is the one thing that you always say, I cannot go without this? Your spray tan, your nails, your toenails, your hair, your makeup, your Botox, your filler. What is the one thing? Go without that for a month.
Yeah. Expose yourself to what it feels like without it.
Yeah.
See if you can do it. You know what comes up for me is I've had a couple instances where I've ran into women out in public and they're like, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting to see anyone today. I don't have my makeup on. And I was like, I saw you and I was like, wow, you're beautiful. I'm so excited to see you. And here you are so worried about how I'm going to think that you look when I wasn't even thinking about that.
Yeah. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. And that I was that girl, you know, I was that girl who would go out and I had to have a face of makeup on because I was so insecure. Now I'm like, I don't want to do anything. I don't care because I'm so fine.
Yeah.
And that takes time. But you know, it's, what I like to always tell people is that is not your fault. That is not your fault. That is society. That is the pressures that have been put on us as women. It is okay if you feel that way. We all probably have felt that way at one point in our life.
Yeah.
And it's what can we do with it now? Can we get to the place where we feel comfortable without it? And actually feel like we don't even want it. That's the real fun part.
Yeah. To feel good being authentically us. And what I've really tuned into lately is vibrational frequency. And so focus in on feeling good, because when you feel good and you go out and you're around other people, they can feel your energy. When you're in a good place, when you're feeling joy or love or abundance or peace, that radiates and it draws people towards you.
It does. It's, I'm a big fan of contrast. And when I used to go out and I had my blonde hair extensions that I spent thousands of dollars a month on, and I had all the spray tan and everything, it was very rare that I mean, people, you were like, oh, you're beautiful, but I needed it. It's like, I needed that. And now I don't do the spray tan. I don't have my hair. And it's like people, I go out in the world and people are like, you're beautiful. Your hair is amazing. Oh my God, your skin, it's pale, but it's so beautiful. All these things that I am insecure about that I'm finally owning. And because I'm owning it, because I'm just choosing to have a different mindset around it, people see that. And it's the frequency, right? Mm-hmm. So it's, the energy is everything. Our frequency is everything. How can we every single day raise our frequency, come into peace within ourselves? That is the goal. And that's when you're going to, like I said, shine. That is really when you're going to shine.
So for our listeners to know, how to raise their frequency, things for me, the journaling, the meditation, the movement, the sleep is a big one, healthy eating. But again, one of the biggest things is like living your truth and listening to the calling of your heart and going after that desire or dream that's burning inside of you, and really like speaking up and standing up for yourself and what you're about.
Yeah. Owning the truth, I think, is the biggest incongruency a lot of us have, because we're so afraid. It's fear-based, right? That's like the lowest frequency on the frequency scale. And when we can live in truth, that's the highest frequency.
Yeah.
So it's being willing to own that. Another one I really love that I started doing in this process, all of the ones that you suggested, also mirror work. I don't know if you've ever done mirror work, but
amazing. Louise Hay.
It's the best. I bought a little mirror on Amazon that's like really fancy, cute. And cheap. And I speak to myself in the mirror and I affirm these things that I love about myself. And it changes the way we see ourselves. So I definitely recommend that one as well.
Yeah. The I am statements. I am love. I am light. I am beautiful. I'm successful. You're programming your subconscious mind for the person you intend to be. And it really, really, really works.
Yes. Yeah. And for the women who, have family, they have kids, a really big priority for you, if you're feeling called to this work, is putting yourself above the people in your family. Feeding yourself first once in a while.
Yeah.
Doing your workout before, you need to go take care of somebody else. Put yourself first. Like, just know that you're worthy of that.
What do they say on the airplane?
Oh, put your oxygen mask first. Yes.
Yeah. You have to take care of yourself. You can't force other people to change. The best thing you can do is lead by example.
Yes. It's so true. It's so true. And that will make you more magnetic. That will raise your frequency. And then your husband is going to want to spend more time with you. Your kids are going to be, mom is being creative. Mom is I'm empowered now as a young girl to do that because I saw my mom do it. Right. We have to focus on us so that we can be supportive to the people around us.
Yeah, it's so true. So Sydney, I've heard you talk about this concept, no story, no problem. Could you break that down for our listeners?
Yes, it is. Gosh, where did I even learn this? I've kind of taken a few different people's philosophies from events and then my mentor and created this no story, no problem. But this is a big one for women. I did a speech on this to a group of spray tan artists once, and they loved it. But most of our life, we are living either from one of two perspectives. One is from everything is a problem, right? It's a problem to be solved. This life, our kids getting them to school, how am I going to get on a Zoom call, right? All these different things. We can see life as a problem.
Victim mindset.
Exactly. And in the Sanskrit lineages, where there's a whole philosophy around this, it's called Vilaya. So Vilaya is seeing the life as a problem to be solved or managed. Anugraha is seeing life as a blessing, seeing everything as an opportunity to learn, to grow, to experience what it's like to be out in the snow and be cold. What is this experience like to get married? What is this experience like to struggle to deal with tech? Whatever it is for you, right? How can we look at everything as an opportunity? And so what happens is if we're super focused on the problem, which as women, our amygdala in our brain is actually more inflamed than men's. That's why we're able to track all of the problems in the environment and notice all of them, and men don't see any of them, right? We're very different. And so we have a bigger amygdala. The only way to shrink that if you're stressing out too much and have anxiety is meditation. I think Joe Dispenza talks about that as well. But if we constantly look at everything in our life as a problem, the weather, things outside of our control, what I see is people become these very small people with these very big problems. But if we can reverse it and we can instead grow the size of ourselves, right? Meditation, breath work, working out, putting ourselves first, mirror work, identity deconstruction, healing, feeling, all of those things, then we can actually grow the size of ourselves and shrink the size of our problem. So instead of this size 4 level problem as us as a 1, we can become a 7, and this 4 level problem is much smaller. And so I always like to look at my life and say, where am I complaining? Where am I blaming? Where am I justifying? Okay, how can I become a bigger person so that none of this even phases me? Because when you can experience life from Anugraha, where you're experiencing everything as a joyful experience and a blessing, that is the goal of our lives. I don't even know what else we're doing if we're not working towards that.
100%. And to be grateful for each experience and each opportunity, as opposed to resisting and fighting and controlling.
Yes. It's, what experience do you want to have? Right. And sometimes we'll notice this if we're like this, or if we have family and we're around family that's like this, right? You can be, oh, wow, that's like an old, no wonder I picked that up. Like that's their stuff. That's not how I am anymore. Right. So it's all comes back to self-awareness and looking at your own thoughts, looking at your behaviors through a lens of the observer rather than the person in the video game experience, right? How can you be the player of the video game rather than the person in the video game?
Another thing I want to touch on is this like masculine versus feminine energy, because when you're a woman building your own business, getting on calls with men, sharing stages with men, it's hard not to be in like masculine energy mode. But I think it's really important to also embody your feminine. Talk to us about like your dance with that and how you have started to lean more into your feminine.
Yes, I was very masculine my whole life. And then when my whole, identity crisis happened, I swung and I was like, I'm not doing jack shit to be mad. I'm going to be so feminine. I'm not doing shit. And so I fell so into the feminine. What that did was it allowed me to recharge my system, which was very burnt out. And what I've done is been able to come back to what I feel like is a very good center place. But something that I did that I would recommend for all women. There's a book called The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong. It's a little bit more of an expensive book, but it's because it's full of value that will change your life. I read that book and it actually made me understand the masculine a lot more. And that's what I think a lot of us just have a misunderstanding of the men and the masculine and what motivates them and what their drivers are, and that they're actually different than us as women. Their main mode is to provide for us. And so when we're trying to be in that space, it's actually taking their greatest gift. It is. Like ours is to nurture, right? And to create life, really.
Yeah.
And so how can we give that gift back to men and empower men in that way to actually make our lives much easier and much more fun and available to the flow of life to be able to create the things we want to create, to not have to force the things. So for me, it looks like when I'm writing my books, I'm like, it doesn't even feel like effort because I'm just in creation. I'm in the feminine, the healthy feminine. And when I need to go do something in the masculine, I do it. And then I drop back into the feminine. Right. Because I've healed that relationship with the masculine. So I highly recommend reading that book, but it's balance.
Yeah. It's so true. It's balance. There was a version of me, I'd say a couple of years ago where I believed I had to reach a certain level of success to be like desired by a man, but it almost like pushed the men away because they're like, you are so focused on your career and so go, go, go that like, what can I provide for you?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's again, the book dives really deep into the mindset of the objections of like, well, I don't want to give my power away to a man. Well, what about this? What about that? Again, once I read that book, it would be way too much to go into right now, but if you choose to read it, it will change. Anything by her is great, but it really supports that. And I found, the love of my life and I've had to learn how to be in the feminine and to enjoy providing what I can provide in a different way. And I found I really like it. And I'm like, I would never go back to the way I was operating before as this boss babe, go, go, go. It's not even attractive to me anymore.
Yeah.
And coming from me, who was all that all day, that's saying something. So to the women who feel that, know that there is a different way. It's more sustainable for you. It's more energizing, and it's actually going to allow your gifts to be utilized at a higher level in the world.
I can't wait to read it. The Queen's Code.
The Queen's Code. It's so good. I can send you a link.
Amazing. Sydney, as we begin to wrap up, talk to us about, I know you're working on a book, Becoming Unpretty, Returning to Our Naturalness. Talk to us about what readers can expect and perhaps some of the other things you're working on.
Yes. So some changes, which is pretty fun. So Becoming Unpretty, I wrote 2 versions of the book.
Okay.
And I was going to be launching it in December of 2024. And I just had this intuitive, feminine, I was attuned into my feminine, and I was like, this is not the way this book is supposed to be. And so I actually recreated the whole thing. It's coming out on Friday. It'll be available on my website. By the time you're listening to this, it'll be available. Yeah. And it's going to be basically almost 100-page workbook where people can actually go through, use the tools that I used, listen to the meditations, to the different practices. It's very customizable for your current life situation. So it's really supporting people in what I call the shine method: shadow work, healing, identity, reconstructing your identity once you've torn it all away, nurturing that identity, and then expanding it. So how can we expand that out? How can we shine our shine in a new way that's really healthy, masculine, feminine, balanced, all of those things. So that's that. And then I have a second book coming out in May, and that is actually it's going to be a fiction book, and it's called The Other Woman. It's based on one of my personal experiences. I won't go too much into it, but that will be available and very supportive for any women who have ever been in a relationship with a man that they knew or didn't know was in another relationship. So that one will be coming out in May, kind of a different, fun, creative spin for me, but that'll be coming out.
Amazing. We can't wait to support you. I'll link it in the show notes. One of the things I'm picking up from you, it's like, no matter what you are doing, whether it's like the badass businesswoman speaking on stage, or if it's doing the identity deconstruction, or if it's writing a book, you go all in on it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big burst of energy person, get the project done, and we move to the next growth opportunity.
I love it. Is there anything you would like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah. I feel like people who listen to this are probably people who believe that there is such a thing as synchronicity. And so I just invite anybody who is listening to this podcast episode, who found their way here, who got it sent to them, to lean into whatever discomfort that you may be avoiding. Because on the other side of the discomfort that you've been avoiding and that you haven't wanted to face is actually where the key to your freedom lies. So through our resistance is where the key to our freedom lies. So lean into that discomfort. If you need support, Lauren's obviously going to be here. I'm going to be here. If you have any questions or need support, we can point you in the right direction, but lean into that discomfort because that's where you're going to find all the juice.
That's a beautiful ending. We're both here for you. What is the quote? Like, the answer lies in the work you're avoiding.
Yes. Yes, that's it. That's it. More succinct.
Where can our listeners find you?
Instagram, TikTok, my website, all under Sydney Ryker.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sydney.
Thank you so much, Lauren.